Hello, my name is Brett Kane, and this is my capstone project for Aviation 350 airline operations. Now, before we go into this capstone, I want to explain a little bit about what this capstone specifically is supposed to show. So this capstone is supposed to take all the information that we've been learning for the past 8 weeks and translate that from more than just head knowledge to actual real life application. We've been learning a lot through the FOM about how airlines operate, specifically how the fictitious uh, LLA airline operates. And even though that's not a real airline, the practices, the values, the way this organization is run, all should be able to translate to practical application, give me a leg up for my future airline career. So this specific capstone course is going to answer 5 questions. The first question it's going to answer is, for the purpose of this project, what is the forecast weather for the Baton Rouge Airport at our estimated time of arrival? The reason we're going to look at that question is we want to know if we have to even schedule or plan an alternate for this flight. If we do have to schedule an alternate or plan an alternate for our route because of weather minimums, the second question is going to be, what are the lowest legal 1 nav alternate minimums? And the third question is going to be, what are the 2 nav legal minimums? After we discuss those and I show you how we got that information, we're going to go to question 4, and that is it legal to use this airport as an alternate for the flight in accordance to the Liberty's handbook? And then why or why not? Finally, we're going to answer the 5th question, is if not affected by NOTAM, what would be the lowest legal alternate weather minimum for the Baton Rouge Airport? So let's go ahead and get started. So the first question is just going to be determining whether we actually need to plan an alternate for this flight. And we want to look at the TAF for our estimated time of arrival. Now our estimated time of arrival is 1800 or 6 p.m. local time. Now to save space on the slides and to make it more streamlined, I didn't put all the documents and all the information that I looked at during this process onto the screen, but I did put the most relevant information so that I can walk you through it. So taking the section of the TAF that we would use, we're left with this section right here, as you can see on the screen. Now normally we would fall under the listed TAF from 1700, but because there's a temporary TAF listed for 1800, which would be our estimated time of arrival, that's the one we want to look at. So if we're looking at that one, we can see that there's going to be 1 statute mile of visibility with thunderstorms and rain in vicinity. Clouds are going to be broken at 500 and then scattered again at 2000 with cumulonimbus clouds. Now we want to take the lowest level we want to take the lowest level here, which is the broken at 500, because that's a ceiling. Broken is ceiling at 500. That's what we're going to be looking at. So our weather for this approach is going to be 1 statute mile, broken 500. According to the Liberty Handbook, that is too low for us to fly without an alternate, so we're going to have to plan an alternate for this flight. What is the lowest legal NAV 1 alternate weather minimums for this airport? So the answer for that is actually going to be the minimums from ILS runway 13, which is going to be 601 mile and a half of visibility. Now, like I said, I didn't put up here all the charts, depth charts that have to clutter the space with that, but I do want to walk you through how we got that answer. So if you look down below here, you can actually see all of the runways available to us and the approaches that we can use. Now, we're not able to use any of the GPS approaches because our flight director and our autopilot is broken for this flight, so all those were thrown out the window. So our nav1 is going to add 400 feet to our ceiling and 1 statute mile to our visibility. And we have to go with these adding to the minimums because Liberty is not authorized to fly the jet chart minimum. So we have to add these to it. So if we're looking down here at the bottom, you can see what each approach the minimums would be, and I've already gone ahead and added both the ceiling, the 400, and the 1 mile visibility to all of these approaches. So if you look at the approaches, the lowest one is the one that we want to pick, and the lowest one is ILS for runway 13, and that's how we get our runway 13 as being our lowest minimums at 601 miles. Now talking about 2 nav, nav 2 is what we're going to use. We have to go into nav 2 if nav 1 does not satisfy. So 601, if that would satisfy our weather requirements, we wouldn't have to plan the 2 nav system for the alternates. But if you recall, our weather for this approach is forecasted to be 500 feet for the ceiling and 1 mile visibility. These minimums for ILS runway 13 with the one nav is not going to cut it. We're still going to be in the clouds. We're not going to be broken out. So we have to go ahead and plan the 2 nav. So what's our lowest 2 nav minimum going to be? It's going to be the minimums that come from localizer runway 22 right, which is 610 and 1 1/4 mile visibility. This one's a little bit more complicated, but we're going to walk you through the same process. Again, we can't use any of the RNAV approaches or anything that uses the GPS because our system is out and we have a broken flight director and a broken autopilot. So these are the ones that we're left with here. Now the 2 nav is going to add only 200 feet to your ceiling and half a mile to your approach minimum. I've gone ahead and already done this and they're inside the parentheses down below. Now since we're using a 2 navigation, we have to pick 2 approaches that have the highest. Well, we have to pick 2 approaches with the lowest, and then we pick the highest. So we're looking down here, and you can see that our 2 lowest approaches would be the ILS 13, which is 401, and then the localizer for runway 22 right at 610 and 1 1/4. Now these are 2 different runways, and 2 different navigation systems. So these fit within the requirements set out within the FOM. So now those are our 2 lowest approaches. Those are the ones that we're going to want to pick, but we have to pick the highest out of those 2. So the highest of those 2 between the ILS and the localizer for runway 22 is going to be the localizer for runway 22, which is 610 and 1/4, 1 1/4 visibility. So is it legal to use this airport as an alternate for our flight? Unfortunately, it's not legal. The reason being our ceiling of 500 and our visibility of 1 mile is going to be too low, even with the 1 nav and the 2 nav. Nothing gets us below that 500 foot and 1 mile visibility. You can find that within the FOM where we get our minimums from. Finally, concluding this capstone, we want to see if there was no NOTAM published, what would be our legal minimum for this airport. Now, I didn't show you the NOTAM, but the NOTAM basically said that one of our ILS runways was out of service. The system was not operating at the time of arrival. However, if we say that that system was operating and that NOTAM did not exist, our lowest minimums we could actually do would be 401, and that would actually put us below the ceiling and visibility that is shown in the forecast. Remember, our forecast is 501. This would be using the 2 nav method because we would be taking the nav 1 method wouldn't put us below regardless, whichever one we chose. So we'd have to use the 2 nav process. And if we did the 2 nav process, we would take the ILS for 13 and the ILS for runway 22. We would still add the 200 feet to both of those, which we did here, and we would still add the half mile visibility to both of these, which we did. And that would give us 401 and 407/8 mile visibility. Now again, we have to take the highest one of these 2 because it's a 2 nav approach. So we would take the ILS 13 because that's our highest one. 401 would put us below our ceiling of 500 and 1 mile visibility. So if there was no alternate minimum, our lowest altitude, our lowest legal alternative would be this listed here as the answer for number 5. It would also make this approach doable within the FOM. So we've talked about all 5 questions and we've answered all 5 questions and we've looked at how we got the answers to those 5 questions. We looked at how the NAV1 was determined, how we got that information, and then we determined after adding all those after adding the amount to it, we determined that we would have to do a 2 nav approach. We did the math for the 2 nav, we picked our 2 lowest, and then we selected the highest of those 2, and we saw that we still would not be able to make this approach into the Baton Rouge airport. This has been Brett King for the Capstone 350 Airline Operations.